What if I told you that General Motors once destroyed the best V8 engine they ever had, simply because it came from Australia? The Holden 308 V8 wasn't just an engine, it was a technical triumph for an entire nation. A machine born out of necessity, engineered with Aussie ingenuity and powerful enough to make Detroit's giants sweat. It won at Bathurst, beat world-class rivals, and nearly became the centerpiece of GM's global V8 strategy. But then, a single phone call from GM's Detroit headquarters brought it all crashing down. Overnight, development was halted, labs were sealed, and Holden lost the future they had fought so hard to create. Why was an engine that was winning races, fuel-efficient, emissions-compliant, and a source of national pride killed without mercy? The answer lies in corporate politics, brand ego, and a harsh truth. GM didn't want an Australian-built engine to outperform America's chosen favorites. By the late 1960s, while Americans were locked in muscle car wars between Mustangs and Camaros, on the other side of the world, Australia was searching for its own identity. Holden, the national automotive icon, knew it couldn't forever rely on Detroit's hand-me-downs. The challenge wasn't just distance, it was economic and political. Import tariffs in Australia were brutally high, deliberately designed to protect local industry. Bringing in a complete V8 engine from the US wasn't just expensive, it was practically impossible. Shipping costs and taxes would push car prices beyond reach. The truth was, Holden had no choice but to develop their own V8 engine. But when they approached GM's global leadership with the idea, the response was lukewarm at best. Go ahead, but don't expect much support. No massive budget, no high-tech testing labs like in America, just belief, Aussie grit, and a team of local engineers who refused to give up. And out of that adversity, they achieved something remarkable. In 1969, Holden introduced the first 308 V8 engine in the HT Holden series, a milestone that opened a new chapter in Australia's automotive industry. But what made the 308 truly special wasn't just that it was made in Australia, it was how it was made. Without millions in funding or state-of-the-art American machinery, Holden's engineers had to innovate in their own way. They couldn't afford costly technologies, so they focused on brilliant simplification. The engine block was redesigned to eliminate unnecessary components, making it lighter and easier to produce with the tools they had. Using thin wall casting, a manufacturing feat at the time, the 308 ended up significantly lighter than many American V8s without compromising durability. Its cooling system was redesigned with larger water jackets and optimized flow, essential for surviving the scorching heat of the outback. But no one would truly understand how great the 308 was until it was put to the ultimate test, Mount Panorama, Bathurst. In the early 1970s, the Bathurst 1000 wasn't just a race, it was Australia's speed sanctuary. All eyes were on the best machines, and it was here that Peter Brock, the legendary Aussie driver, made the Holden 308 name immortal. Behind the wheel of a compact but ferocious Torana, powered by the 308 V8, Brock scored resounding victories against more famous American and European rivals, not once, but multiple times. This wasn't just a win on the racetrack. It was a win for Australians who dared to believe they could build a world-class V8. The deep, throaty growl of the 308 became a part of the nation's collective memory. Every time a Holden 308 roared past, people didn't just hear an engine, they heard the pride of a country. And from the legendary curves of Bathurst, the Holden 308 transcended its technical roots. becoming a high-speed icon of the Australian spirit. After its resounding victories on the racetrack, Holden didn't stop. They knew the 308 was capable of more, and began a quiet but ambitious evolution program. Holden engineers developed experimental versions using cross-flow cylinder heads, improving intake and exhaust efficiency while reducing fuel consumption. The result? Significant power gains, rock-solid durability, and a clear path toward world-class performance. They didn't stop there. Lightweight aluminum components were tested to reduce weight and improve the 308's power-to-weight ratio, bringing it closer to Europe's best high-performance engines. All of this was achieved on a shoestring budget with modest tools, yet the results exceeded expectations. Even more impressive, Holden was ahead of its time with electronic fuel injection, integrating Bosch technology into a high-performance V8 engine as early as the mid-1970s, long before GM America moved beyond carburetors. Had they been given the chance, the 308 could have become one of the greatest V8 engines in the world. But just as the 308 was reaching the peak of its potential, something no one saw coming happened. A phone call from Detroit, and everything came crashing down. On Monday, November 3rd, 1975, Holden's engineers arrived at the lab as usual. But this time, security guards were waiting. Prototype test cars were being loaded onto trucks, and the entire 308 development program was shut down overnight. GM's official reason? Resource reallocation. But later declassified documents tell a different story. A confidential report dated October 29, 1975, from GM's North American Operations Committee stated, Holden's 308 cubic inch V8 development has exceeded performance parameters established for non-premium brand engines. In other words, GM could not allow a brand like Holden to outshine the Corvette. At the Milford Proving Grounds, the upgraded 308 was producing 380 horsepower, while still meeting upcoming emissions standards. That placed it squarely in Corvette territory. In a scathing internal memo, John DeLorean, then still at GM, declared, "There will be no Australian V8 outperforming a Corvette. Brand hierarchy must be maintained, regardless of technical merit." And just like that, what followed that phone call wasn't just a project cancellation, it was a calculated, systematic effort to suffocate every innovation Holden had envisioned. Holden's engineers had poured their energy into promising upgrades: aluminum heads for weight reduction, electronic fuel injection, EFI, adapted from Bosch, and lean burn combustion chambers for better efficiency without sacrificing power. But all of it was blocked from above by Detroit. The aluminum head program, which significantly improved power-to-weight ratios, was scrapped despite showing strong durability in tests. EFI, a system Holden implemented before GM America, was shelved. Even roller lifters, a basic performance upgrade, were denied approval. While GM USA was still fiddling with carburetors, Holden had developed a microprocessor-based engine management system that cut emissions by 35%, while still delivering over 300 horsepower in the mid-1970s, but GM would not allow it into production. There was no more doubt. This wasn't about engineering. This was brand politics. Holden was assigned to the bottom tier of GM's global structure, and if anything, even brilliance, threatened the throne of Corvette, Cadillac, or Pontiac, it had to be buried. By the mid-1970s, while American 5.8s were struggling under emissions regulations, Holden was actually pulling ahead. The Chevrolet 350, once GM's pride, had dropped to about 165 horsepower in the Corvette. Meanwhile, race-spec Holden 308s were producing 240 to 260 horsepower, all while meeting stricter Australian emissions standards. Had development been allowed to continue, Holden could have led GM's global V8 innovation, even becoming a new research hub for engine technology. But instead, GM's loyalty remained firmly rooted in Detroit, where hundreds of millions of dollars continued to flow, regardless of merit. Holden wasn't just blocked technically, they were financially starved. In 1981, Holden's entire R&D budget was just $24 million, while GM invested over $500 million into V8 programs for Chevrolet and Cadillac alone. Even as the Australian dollar weakened, making US imports more expensive than ever, GM insisted on importing American engines rather than supporting local development. The opportunity for Holden to become a global leader in V8 technology was strangled before it ever had a chance to breathe. Even after being held back by GM internally, Holden still had one last chance to prove itself, and it came in the form of a crisis. The 1979 oil crisis sent global fuel prices skyrocketing. At the same time, emissions standards tightened across major markets. With its experience in harsh climates and compact engine optimization, Holden was uniquely positioned to lead, and they were ready. The VH Commodore project, with its improved 308 V8, featured microprocessor engine control, electronic fuel injection, and exhaust gas recirculation. The result? 302 horsepower with 35% lower emissions, outperforming many American models in both performance and environmental compliance. But when Holden submitted the proposal to GM Global Leadership, the response was cold. Funding had been redirected to other global engine initiatives. In other words, the program was dead. Meanwhile, GM USA was pouring money into bulky, inefficient V8s that couldn't meet the standards Holden had quietly surpassed. What should have been Holden's triumphant moment instead became the final blow that ended Australia's V8 dream. And it wasn't just development being denied. Holden was also forced to adopt top-down American technology, even when it clearly didn't fit their locally engineered designs. When Holden proposed cutting-edge solutions, from EFI to lean-burn combustion, GM didn't respond with discussion. Instead, they handed down a directive: use US standard equipment. The problem? Those components were completely mismatched with the 308's architecture and performance goals. Former Holden engineer James Connolly once described it perfectly. It was like being handed Cessna airplane parts and being told to install them in a helicopter. The US emission systems were designed for entirely different engine blocks. They clashed with Holden's combustion chamber design, intake geometry, and cooling system. The result? Strangled breathing, reduced output, and performance that had once been world-class, now fading into memory. Worse still, while American divisions received hundreds of millions in funding to develop custom solutions, Holden was left to patch, retrofit, and make do with whatever others decided for them. By 1985, the writing was on the wall. Holden was forced to phase out the 308, not because it was obsolete, but because it was no longer allowed to exist in a system where innovation was limited by brand politics. Its replacements were imported engines, the 3.8-liter V6 from Buick, and later, the 5.7-liter V8 from Chevrolet. Names that sounded impressive, but struggled in Australia's unique conditions and failed to build the emotional connection the 308 once commanded. The irony: The final Holden VN Commodore, equipped with the 308 V8 and EFY, outperformed Chevy's 5.7L in fuel economy and emissions, all while running on a fraction of the development budget. Though it was quietly killed off, the Holden 308 lives on, not on production lines, but in the memories, the sounds, and the pride of millions of Australians. For many generations, the 308 wasn't just an engine. It was the rumble echoing through country roads on Sunday mornings. It was the sight of a Holden Tirana tearing through the corners of Bathurst with Peter Brock behind the wheel. It was the feeling of witnessing something truly Aussie, going head-to-head with and beating the best America and Europe had to offer. Many still preserve the 308 like a national treasure, polishing each part as if safeguarding a piece of Australia's history. In custom builds, classic car shows, and even museums, the 308 stands tall as a symbol of self-reliance and wasted brilliance. More importantly, the Holden 308 is a reminder. Sometimes greatness isn't rewarded, it's punished. And maybe that's exactly why it deserves to be remembered, honored, and retold as one of the defining chapters in Australia's automotive legacy. The Holden 308 wasn't just an engine. It was a story that was never fully told, a machine born from Aussie spirit, powered by local talent and pulled down by cold decisions made half a world away. We often celebrate what succeeds, but sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that never got the chance to shine. And the Holden 308 is a perfect example. What do you think? Does the 308 deserve a spot in the Hall of Fame of legendary V8s? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you believe this story deserves to be heard, hit like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel as we continue exploring more forgotten machines, the ones that nearly changed history but were hidden away.